All right, so does this look right, Aiden? Oh, sorry. It helps if I plug it in. You're like, yeah, that's exactly what it's supposed to look like. We're going to code in faraway places, on the edge of the, I don't know what river that is. Let's see. Does that look right?
I think that looks right.
Does that look right? Okay. All right, so here are all of Aiden's, kind of his first stab at grabbing all of his items, right, from this JSON file. So you guys should have, if we take a look at this, where is it? Here we go. If I take a look at his JSON data file right here, we see that he's got, for each of his items, he has a title, he has a description, a price, and then the image that he's using, that he's loading, that's going to correspond to that, right? And so then he's reading that information in. When you come over here to his actual code, which he's got in his store.html file. And that's, by the way, what I would recommend that you guys do as well. Like the initial example that I gave you guys, I had like the HTML file, and then I had the JSON data file, and then I had a separate JavaScript file. That was just to kind of show you an example. You definitely should use the JSON data file as a separate JavaScript file. But as far as the JavaScript for each page, we're basically going to have 3 pages. We're going to have our home page, and then you're going to click on an item in the home page and go to the product page. From the product page, you'll click a button that says, I want to buy this item, and it's going to add it to your shopping cart. And so you'll also, our 3rd page will be our cart page, right? So that's our goal, is to kind of have those 3 pages, information coming in from our JSON data file, and we're going to use some local storage, which we used back in with our Burgle app. I don't know if you remember that, but that's going to kind of keep track of our shopping cart information, so we can kind of add and remove items to that, and know how many items are in the cart at all times. But this was sort of the first stab, right? And so what we've got to do today, what I didn't realize as I was first looking at this, was that we're not going to have we're not meeting the Friday, which is the last Friday of everybody else's of that week, right? So we're 1 week short of what I thought we were going to have. So we really got to make some good progress today in basically going from this page to our product page, and maybe even getting started with looking at this idea of adding products to the local storage as we click the I want to buy this item, right? So I was going to do like a kind of a search filter piece on this homepage. I just don't know if we're going to have time for that. So what you guys do need to be thinking about, and this should be the simple part, right? Is kind of the aesthetics of all this, making this page look nice. So you have full creative license to do whatever you want on how you want this page to look. This would be a pretty ugly storefront if I just went here, and because I don't know what I'm buying, I don't know what this page, what this site's for. So I would sort of envision some sort of header up here, some details about what the site is for, and then I did mention last time having the ability to kind of hide and show pieces of this without it affecting everything else. And so the way that Aiden has laid his out is all of his items are well, yours are just listed one after the other, right? So you probably need some type of, to sort of do the hide and show piece. Okay, so yeah, you're dumping all of yours here in the main content. You probably need some sort of outer div that sort of encapsulates each of these items, so we can sort of hide and show those divs from the home page if we have time to do the search piece, all right? Because the search piece will be pretty simple, just kind of based on the title. And I'd love to show you guys how to do that, but you are going to have to, the way Aiden's is laid out, you would need kind of another, well, we could add it right here to the append. We could just put it right in front of this, actually. If I went div, ID, or maybe do a class that equals, you're using back quotes, so I could say class equals items, something like that. And then we could have a closing. I thought you had abandoned this, man. I was like, I guess Braden is no longer in this class because I haven't heard anything from him or anything like that. So, all right. So what I'm going to do, Aiden, is I'm going to remove these 2 PRs because those are going to be hanging out there when we hide and show this thing if I don't, right? And so basically this allows me to, now that I've done this, let's see if it changes. Okay, so it basically looks the same except there's a little less space here. But what this will allow us to do now is to, I can go in here and I can say, if I want to move, if I do a search and it doesn't match, say, the second item on the page, and I want to hide that item from the page, I can basically say, let's see, we added a class which was items, is that what I called it? Let's see. Yep, class items, and I want to do the one that's the second one, so that would be item, that one there, and I can do hide, and I can run code that hides that guy, and what happened? Something didn't work quite right. Let me inspect this. Div class items, display none. Okay, there it is displayed. Why is there not a div around that? There's no div, closing div. Oh, wait a minute. What am I doing? What did I do wrong here, Aiden?
Oh, I think there's separate lines for the append instead of just one big append line. It's only adding or that should.
I put it at the end of this guy, right? It should be right there on the end. That's really. Did I just need to reload? Did I reload already? Div. Yeah, that's strange. You know what? I wonder if it's something to do with the append shouldn't care. It's like it automatically closed that guy off for some reason. Div class items. See, it put it after the product name. That's really strange.
Yeah, it looks like automatically.
I have never seen it do that. I'm just curious. Let's just try this. Do one on the very end here. This is always the danger of just building something like this on the fly. And yeah, look at that. Whenever I add that div, whenever I append that, it automatically closes it off for me when I add it on its own line. That is crazy. I have never seen it do that. I can't think of any reason why it would just force that. I guess the way that I've always done this is instead of doing it as separate appends, I just kind of do one big append for the whole thing. And so I guess in that case it recognizes that there is a closing tag, and so it doesn't close it for you, but because we're running the first append, it sees that and it goes, ooh, he forgot to close it, I'm going to close it for him. That's really annoying. That's not how I would want it to work at all. So how would I have to change this guy to make it do what I want it to do? I would have to change it like this. I think this is all I would have to do. Let's do, I think I can, just because you're using back quotes here, I think I can put all these on their own line. Let's see if this works. I need to remove the back quotes. I'm not paying attention. Because you've got a starting back quote, so I think I can do this. Let's see if it likes it. And we'll put this. We'll put a back quote here. And we'll remove this, and this, and this, and this. All right, is it complaining about anything? Doesn't like that. I'm terminating the string literal because that's a quote. That needs to be a back quote. There we go. All right, let's see if that. If you guys have no idea what I'm doing here, I'll explain it in just a second. All right, there we go. Now, okay, now I can do console, hide the second item, and it hides and it doesn't interrupt the flow. And so what I did here, I just discovered this, so this is good for all of us to learn. Apparently the append function in jQuery, if you say I want to append a particular HTML element, right? And what does append do? Can you guys remember the difference between append and after? So like if I have this div tag here, and maybe it's got an ID of main, all right? And we've got a closing div, and then maybe we have some text in here that's just some text, right? If I do jQuery, use jQuery and say pound main dot after, and undo more text. How is that going to be different than the same exact thing, but instead append more text? How's that going to differ, Aiden?
The after would actually create a new element after the element that you say, and append is just going to add to the element that you selected.
Yeah, so this first one right here, I'll put an arrow beside it like this. This one is going to put it after the closing tag of our, so after the entire element, it's going to put more text. All right? Whereas the append one says it's supposed to be inside main, but it's supposed to be at the very end. So this one's going to stick it right here. Do you guys see the difference in those two? One sticks it at the end, inside the tag, that's what append does. The after sticks it outside the tag at the very end. Okay, and there's a corresponding before. Before would have put it here. Prepend would have put it at the very beginning of main. Right? So he's using append because he's got this kind of outer div tag here, and he's using append to just add each of his items that he's selling right inside of his div here. So he's using this scenario. All right? But what we just discovered was if in my append, if I have if I want to like start a div tag, and then after that, so that I want to have a div tag here, and then I want to put some text, and then do my closing div tag. If I do that in separate append statements, jQuery is automatically adding the closing tag right here. And so my some text never shows up inside of there. So the way that I changed his was I used a single append, and I said to this main content div here, we're going to just we're going to append all of this. This whole div is going to be a single product, and he's looping through his JSON and just adding product after product, right? So that's what. If you guys haven't done this yet, if you don't have this working yet, here's an example of how you could do that, right? He parses his JSON data, he stores all of that in this products variable, and then he loops through that using a for loop here and says, okay, I'm going to display the product name, the product description, the product price. This is accidental, right? This extra $sign here.
That's just to add the $sign in front of the price because I didn't.
Oh, $sign price. Okay, gotcha. That makes sense. And then here's the image right here. And he's using the backticks. What does that back quote do? Someone besides Aiden, tell me what the back quote does when you're building strings in JavaScript. Let me remind you, because back quotes are really nice, especially for something like this. So I can do, let's say I have a variable and the variable's just going to hold my name. I feel like I just did this last week, actually. If I want to say hello Jamie, I could do it like this. So I've got a string that's called greet. I've got a variable called greeting, and if I want greeting to hold hello Jamie, or let's just alert it. If I want to say alert hello Jamie, one way that I could do that is I could use the plus sign to concatenate strings together. All right? You got this? You clear on this, Levi? Yep. I can use the plus sign to concatenate strings together and do it like that, right? And sure enough, it says, well, I need a space in there, but it says, hello, Jamie, right? But how could I do that same thing? Let me put the space because that bugs me. There we go. Hello, Jamie. How could I do that same thing using back quotes? Can someone besides Aiden tell me?
You could put it inside the quotation marks and put it around back quotes. No.
No? So you said inside quotation marks. What do you mean?
And then, like, you could put name inside quotation marks, but you would, inside the line, but you would just put back quotes around it. Or it's
Like something like this? Is that what you're saying?
the opposite.
Oh, so back quotes around name?
Yeah.
Okay, not quite. The back quote says, I'm going to allow you, because I put back quotes around this whole thing, I'm going to allow you to pull in, to insert like some JavaScript commands or JavaScript variables in here. And all you have to do to let me know that this is JavaScript code that you want to run is you encase this in curly braces. All right, so if I encase anything inside the string with curly braces, it says, like in this case, since it just says name, it's like, oh, that's JavaScript code. I'm looking for a variable named name, and whatever value it's holding, I'm going to place that in there, right? So I do that, and it says, wait a minute, am I getting confused with C#? What do I need to do? There's some way I have to signify that, right?
It's the dollar sign in front of
You have to put a dollar sign in front of it?
Yeah.
Really? So the same thing jQuery does. Do it like that? There we go. Hello, Jamie. All right. You didn't, the dollar sign wasn't meant, you put the dollar sign in the front of it whenever you were doing it in C#. I'm getting C# and JavaScript confused. So if you want to run JavaScript code, you put the dollar sign in front of it. All right? Does it work the same as in C#? Now I'm second guessing myself. Can I just say right here, can I say 1 plus 1 and it'll do 2? I said 1 plus 1. Let's see. Yeah, all right, so it'll run code. It'll just, whatever's inside dollar sign, curly braces, it runs that JavaScript code. So since we had a variable named name, then it just inserted that in there. And the nice thing about that is you can do this on multiple lines. You can have, it doesn't care. It can span multiple lines. So however you type it in, hello, Jamie, return, I hope your day is going great. And if I hit enter, it shows that on 2 separate lines, just like I typed it in. So back quotes are really nice like that. You don't have to worry about, having all the plus signs there and closing off your quotes and all that kind of stuff. So this is definitely the way that I would recommend sort of building what you want your individual items to look like on your page. Is use that back quote. It's called string interpolation, I think is what you refer to that as. But any questions about what he's got going on here? If you haven't done this yet, you may want to take a picture of that. If you're struggling with getting that working, because this is exactly how I would recommend adding those products to your page. See how nice and concise this is? There's not a lot of stuff going on. You don't need a lot of stuff going on, right? The one thing he's going to have to go in here and add now is just some stuff around his main content just to kind of pretty up the page, right? So that we have a title and we know what the purpose is of this page. But and if he needs to make a change at this point that affects every item on the page, he just makes it right here, right? Anything he does here is going to affect every item on the page. And that's going to be critical for the piece that we're about to do. So any questions about that? Or you can watch the video, right? This will be on the video. See if I can see the TV pretty good on the video. Yeah, I think so. I think that'll work. So you can always go back and watch the video for that. Just again, let me show his JSON data. So does everybody have a JSON data file that looks similar to that there? Yep. All right, I've got all your items in there. Okay, so let's think about what our next step is going to be. So what we want to happen is that this is a page that has a bunch of items on it, right? And so the idea with this home page here is these should sort of be like thumbnail images, like probably, he gave his a height of 275 for each of these. I would probably Make these a little bit smaller, maybe 150 by 150. So you can fit more on the home page, right? And maybe not do them one right after the other. Maybe you could do them across the screen and sort of fill up the screen and show the items that you're selling. Have a box around stuff or something so that it's clear these are different items. Like for example, here's something that I had done previously. Let's see if I can find it. I don't know if I took a picture of the home page. So in a previous class, I had created something that looked like this. So maybe this was it. Let's see. Nope. Project 4 solution. No, that wasn't the one I was looking for. Thought it was here. Let's see what this one looks like. Yeah, something like that, right? So I'm selling snowboards here, and we got a number of snowboards, and you can kind of, the idea would be you would click on those guys and go to another. We're not going to put our add to cart on the home page. We're going to put it on the subsequent product page, so that ours will look something like this right here. Come on. Yeah, ours will look more like this, right? You click on an individual product, you're taken to a larger image of that product. Additional detail that you wouldn't want to include on the home page, right? And the price of it, and you add it to the cart, and we're going to keep track of our cart up here in the corner, where every time I click add to cart, this number here needs to increase by 1, right? And always show me at all times what I've got in my shopping cart. And then if I want to go to my shopping cart and finalize my purchase, I can just click the actual shopping cart, and it's going to take me to my final cart page. Okay, so that's the goal for what we're trying to accomplish. So 3 pages. Home page, a detailed product page, and then this final shopping cart page. So let's talk about how we would go from our home page image to this, or to the items that are listed on our home page to this product page. All right. And so in order to do that, we need to, going back to Aiden's page here, we're going to have, we're going to have to be able to click something and go to another page, right? So what are we going to use to link to another page? What type of HTML element? How do I create a link on my page? What do we call those?
Hyperlink.
What's the tag? So hyperlink, what is the tag for that? Do you remember? It's actually called an anchor tag, so it starts with A, right? So don't confuse that with the link tag, right? Yes.
Is it href?
Yeah, so you got to have an href attribute, right? So we're going to have something with this around it. Let's see, we got Braden, we got Chris, Aiden, Christian. It seems like you helped me out with something. Did you help me out with something? I think so. Yeah. All right. You know what? Here's what I'm thinking. You guys just showed up today, right? Half the class is gone. Everybody should just get on the board today. So let's it's like this is for the aquarium, right? What nerd goes to the aquarium instead of going? They're not true nerds, right? You wouldn't go to the aquarium. I mean, if they were maybe biology nerds, but we're not biology nerds. We're computer nerds. So there's a difference. So yes, so this is where we're going to go to our product.html page, right? Does anybody know? Like I said, don't get this confused with the link tag. There is a link tag in JavaScript and HTML. Does anybody know what that tag is used for? You know,
Linking to like external style sheets.
external style sheets, yes. If I didn't want to put my styles in my page and I wanted to have an external style sheet, that's what that tag's used for. But I need something like this, right? It's going to go to my product page. So I'm gonna just create this product page real quick here in Aiden's folder, and it's going to be pretty plain Jane. In fact, it's not going to have anything on it to start with. Product.html. And we'll just say something like, let's see, where's your store? Here's your store. We'll copy his We'll just copy his store stuff and we'll modify it according to our needs here. Oh, also, by the way, notice that Aiden has in his script here, he's got this opening document.ready function, and then he closes it off down here. You definitely should have that in yours. What does that do for us?
Wait till the entire page is loaded.
Yeah, make sure that none of this code runs until all the HTML elements are available for us to access, right? So that's going to be super important. We're also going to leave this JSON parse data, but for now, I'm just gonna comment this piece out. And although we are gonna use this. In fact, actually, this is pretty close. We just don't need to loop through all of them. So for this one here, it's going to be a single product, right? Is the goal for this page. So here's product.html. So what we need to do is come back over here to his store, and we're going to just do this on our product image. On our product image, we're going to create our anchor tag. So href equals, and we're going to go to product.html. All right, and we need to close off our anchor tag at the end of his image over here. So we've closed that off. So now if I go back to his page, if I can figure out where that was it here? Yeah, right here. So if I reload this guy now you'll see as I roll over his images, which are these 15-minute, 30-minute coding session things. If I roll over it, you can kind of see down here at the bottom, if you're not sitting all the way back where Levi and Chris are, that this says product.html. So it's linking to that page. So if I click on this now, I see that it goes to my product.html page. And right now, all I've got that doing is just displaying the word product, right? But here's the thing. If I go to a 30-minute coding session, I just see the same thing. It's just loading the same page. But what do I want to load when I go to the product page? I want to load just that specific individual item, right? So how am I going to know when I get to my product page? How's my product page going to know, oh, I'm supposed to display the information for the 30-minute coding session and not the 15-minute coding session? How can I kind of pass that information along to the product page, some kind of information along to the product.html page that lets it know which item it's loading? Any ideas there? And we talked a tiny bit about this, but we didn't spend a lot of detail on it. I mean, there's multiple ways to do it, but we talked about the way that I think is probably the easiest way to do it. You know? No? Aiden, you got an idea?
You could just pass along like the ID or the name that it's got. When you click it, pass along that image ID or whatever.
And how would you pass it along?
You can use, let's see, so when you could go into a function or something, you could pass it along, or you could just do this dot, the ID.
Well, but I mean, how does it, like once I leave this page here, the next page doesn't know anything about my JavaScript on the previous page, right? So how am I going to somehow make that ID, let's say we go with the ID scenario, I like that, it's nice and simple. How am I going to make that ID available to the product page? Any thoughts on that? So I think we talked about this briefly. How does Google do it? How does Google know if I go in here, if I go to google.com and I type in my query, right? And let's say I'm searching for how to pass information from HTML page to HTML page. That's not a great query, but when I hit enter here, JavaScript actually loads another page. How did this next page know that the query I was looking for was that what I was searching for was this how to pass information from HTML page to HTML page? It totally reloaded the page, and yet it kept my search up here. How did it know that? It knew that because that information is right here in the query string. All right, haven't we talked about query strings in here? I feel like we just went through this. Did we just go through this? Let me zoom in. So if you zoom in, you see up here, the query string is the information in the URL that comes after the question mark. All right, and so right after the question mark, so here Google's calling its search page, And after the question mark, it says Q equals, and notice right here, Q equals, here we go, Q equals how to pass information from HTML page to HTML page. That's exactly what I typed in, right? So that's what we're going to use. We're going to pass an ID that way. We're going to use the query string, and we're going to pass the ID of the product that the person is interested in from our home page to our product page using that. All right? And it's going to be super easy. So check this out. If I go back over here to my to the thing that's looping through, right? This href that's being created right here. All I've got to do is add a query string to the end of this guy, and I'm just going to say ID equals, and I somehow need to get the ID of this particular piece of content. Now, ours is limited in the sense that we just know we have a certain number of items, right? Our JSON data is just a bunch of items listed together. And so really probably the easiest way to do this is just to say whichever item this is, like in our case here, the I, right? That's going to correspond to the ID for this guy. So I could just go $, right here, $, curly brace, I. All right, let me just show you what that's going to do for us. Right, so now let me zoom in here. Go to magnifier again. Now, if I roll over, I don't know if this is going to work for me. So as I'm rolling over this, it's gonna, there's no way for me to stay zoomed in and kind of see it. I guess maybe at the very bottom I can see it. If I roll over the very bottom one down here, yeah. Notice this was, so you only have 9 items right now, is that right? Or 10 items?
Yeah, it should be 10.
Okay, all right, so I had said a dozen initially, but so that was kind of confusing me here, because if there had been a dozen, this last item should have been number 12, right? But it's number 9 instead. Why is it number 9 and not number 10, since there are 10 items?
It starts at 0.
Starts at 0, right? And so it says this is the 10th item that's in my JSON file if I start counting with 0, right? And it appends this ID onto the end of that, right? And so now when I go to my product page, I load that, I can now figure out from the URL of my product page which ID, the ID of the item that we actually want to display on this page. Does that make sense to everybody? That's exactly how most of these websites do it, right? I mean, there are other ways. We could have stored that in a session variable or a local storage variable, something like that. There are other ways around it, but usually websites use the query string. If you go to Amazon and you search for an item and you click on that item, the way that it knows which product to show you the details for, it's embedded somewhere up there in the query string, all right? So here's one of the craziest, most frustrating things to me about JavaScript. I can't believe, maybe they've added it and I just missed it in recent years and I didn't pay attention. But it is shocking to me that they don't give me an easy way to get items from the query string. All right, JavaScript lets me get the query string. So if I do this for this page here, if I say, and it's in the document object. So if I go document.location, if I do document.location.href, that will return the entire URL for the page that I'm viewing. Okay, so this is everything right now, because this is on my local system. The full URL for this page starts off with file and it tells me where it's located on my system. But if I just want to see the query string portion of this, I can do document.location and I can do search. And search will just give me the query string part. All right. So if I had a bunch of different items in my query string, the way that you separate these kind of name value pairs, right? ID equals this. If I had something else, maybe, I don't know, maybe I was changing the background of this page for whatever reason. So for this one, we're going to have color as black instead of white. I could do that on there, and if I look at my search now, I see that this is all of the stuff that's in my query string. But what's always been frustrating to me with JavaScript is that they don't have a function where I could say like document.location search, and I want you to give me just the color parameter, just the value for the color parameter that's in my search thing. And if I do that, like I want it to return the word black, right? Or if I do ID here, I want it to return the number 9 because that's the value that's in my query string for ID, all right? So what I did is I wrote a little function the other day, and it's not case insensitive. I really need to probably go in and fix that and make it to where it doesn't care about case. But I've got a function that will, let me see if it's in my history here. I don't know if I was doing it on this one or not. Oh, no, it's not here. All right, that's fine. I've got it somewhere. Let's see. That I'm going to give you guys. Here it is. This right here. Function get QS value, get query string value. So I'm going to give you the code for this function right here. All right. So if you put this on your product page, all you have to do, if you want to get the ID, the whatever value is associated to the ID parameter, you can basically say get QS value. You can say let, I don't know, current ID, whatever you want to call it. Let current ID equal get QS value, and then just pass in the value, the name of the parameter in the query string that you want to get the value of. So if I do that, that's going to return for me current ID is now set to 9 because that's the value that's in my query string, right? This, let me zoom in again so you guys can see, right? Our query string has ID equals 9, and so I called my function and said get QS value for ID, and it returned the value 9. All right, so I'm just going to give you guys that so you don't have to write that yourself. But what that now allows me to do, if I add that code to my product page over here, and again, I'm going to just add everything right here inside my document.ready function. Go back here and grab that. That was ugly. So now that it's there, I can say, I'm just going to make main content blank again, and I'm just going to stick inside there. I'm going to say $pound, just like he had here, main content. And all I'm going to append right now is just something that says what the current ID is. So I'm going to say append, here we go, let current ID equal, same thing I did before, where I call get QS value. Nope, I just want this. QS value, give me the value for the ID in the query string. And then this is just going to say product ID is, and we're going to do $sign that, and it's going to be current ID. All right, so now if I reload this page, it says product ID is 9. All right, so if I go back here to my home page, now if I click on, so HTML code, I don't know, looks like it's item number 6 out of the list. And so if I click on that, then it says the product ID that you just clicked on was 6. Okay, so now I have a way on my product page to know which product they wanted to view details about, right? Now where am I going to get all the other details on my product page? Where am I going to get all the other information from?
From your JSON.
Yeah, I'm back to my JSON file, right? So all I've got to do is go into my JSON file, the same stuff that I did on my home page, and say, hey, get the item that's it's really the 7th item, right? Since we started counting with 0. Get the 7th item because my product ID is 6 here. Get the 7th item and display that information right here. All right, so I'll have like a bigger image than the little thumbnail I had on the home page, and then all of the details, because my home page probably shouldn't include all the details, right? Like all the description information. Like notice how I did it here. It's just kind of a short title for the item, and then we're going to click on that, and then we're going to see the kind of full product information along with a button that says I'm going to add this to my cart. Does that make sense? What we're trying to do there? You guys think you have the tools to do that if I give you this code for grabbing the information from the query string?
Maybe.
Maybe. This is a good answer. The nice thing is, again, we've got all this on video, right? And I'm going to give you this code for getting the value from the query string. Let me just ask this question. Does the query string idea make sense to you guys? Do you get how that works? All right. So this code's just going to let you grab that ID from the query string, and then you're gonna loop through your JSON file and get the appropriate ID. Now, some people actually, when I've taught this before, they actually add an ID field here. So they manually put an ID, and so you could do that. I could say ID1 for this guy and ID2 for the next one or whatever. And then in my code that's coming from on my store front page, right? I would just stick that ID, grab it from here as I'm spitting out each of those items. So that's an option as well. But in this case here, I don't know with the way that we've laid ours out, that shouldn't be a semicolon. Sorry, that should be a comma. The way that we've done ours, you could really just pass in whichever of your 12 items, which item it is like that, and then load the appropriate one. Let's see, how would I load the appropriate one? Does everybody see, like if I come in here, so I'm going to go back to my product page. Now that I know what the ID is, the current ID is at, does everybody see, I could just simply say the product ID is that, and I could say the title for this item is, and I could grab what he's got right here and display the title. What do I have to change about this in order to display the title for the item that I'm pulling up details for on this page? What needs to change with this code? How does this part specifically need to be modified based on the code that I've written here? If current ID is holding the current ID for the product I'm trying to display. Anybody know? Where do I need to use this current ID? Yep.
You can just grab the items and then EQ it by just the current ID to get the element.
Yeah. What I was trying to get you guys to see, all I've got to do is replace that I there with current ID. Right? If I do that and reload my page, now it says, let me do this on a new, let me put a BR, so we'll see it on a new line. The title for this item is HTML code. All right, let's make that a little bigger so we can see it. So if I go back here to this, let's choose a different one, let's make sure it's working. I choose the 3-hour coding session. It says product ID is 4, the title for this item is 3-hour session. All right? So it's you see how simple that is? To grab that information from the JSON. Now that I've parsed my JSON and stored it in this products variable, I just need to use that ID to say, okay, pull in the title, pull in the description, pull in the price, all the stuff that I need to pull in, right? So I can now add this guy to my cart. All right, any questions about that? Again, if you're confused, I wish you would ask questions now. But if you're confused and you don't ask questions now, go back and watch this video that I'm going to post. Because all the code is right here. Right? Thank you, Aiden. Now, I'm going to go ahead and for this item, let's go ahead and put the I really could display all of this stuff, right? I could use this whole thing that he's got here. We're just going to we'll make it a little larger. So it's everywhere that I had, I don't need my for loop now, right? Because I'm not displaying all of the items, I'm only displaying one. So I'm going to remove my for loop. And so we're going to back this up like that. And so everywhere that I had I before, I'm going to put current ID. And so this is going to display the same guy, but now that I'm on the page that's specific for this product, I can make my image a little bigger because I got a lot more room. So we're going to do like a 300 by 300 size image. All right, so let's see what this looks like now. If I reload it again, here we go. So there's all of my information that's specific for that product. And I need something. I need an area at the top of the page, and really this area should be on every page except for the shopping cart page on your site. You're going to need an area at the top of your page that basically holds the number of items that you currently have in your cart. Okay, and so I'm just going to add a section here. I'm just going to put my styles directly in here, but you can do something fancier than this. We're going to align. I think this will do that. Let's see. Shopping cart. Let's see if this works. Whoops, did I misspell a line? I didn't like that. It's not. Is it text align? That's what it is. There we go. Shopping cart. And I'm going to stick in here, I'm going to stick a span tag, and this span tag is going to have an ID of cart or num cart, so the number of items that I have in the cart, and it's going to default to 0. And so currently there are no items in my cart, and so basically I want to be able to add items, and as I add items, I want this value up here to increment each time, right? Let me make that a little bigger so we can see it. All right, so let's do this. Let's we gotta add. What are we gonna have to add to our page in order to add items to the shopping cart?
An add to cart button.
We gotta have a button, right? So let's add a button in our code back over here. So we'll just after our product image for this one, we're going to actually I'm going to make everything a little bit larger for this one. Oh, we don't even have any CSS on here, do we? So I'm going to add a style sheet here, and we're just going to make so I don't have to zoom in so much. We're going to make the for the body. We're going to set the font size to we'll just do 20 points, something large. And then I can, yeah, I think that'll work. Then I can kind of zoom back out here, and this won't be, there we go. I'm gonna tell you what, we'll put an HR here just so that we'll have some kind of separation between our main content and our shopping cart at the top. There we go. And we need a button, like you said. We need a button that's going to add this guy to the shopping cart. So down here at the very bottom, after our product image, we're just going to add a button, right? Button, let's see, add to cart. Right? That would be sufficient. There we go. I would like for that to be a little bit larger. Maybe I need to set the button font size also to be 20 points. There we go. All right, so now we got a big add to cart button. Again, this is ugly. You guys are going to make it pretty, right? And so when I click this guy, I should see this number here increment, right? So first, let's hook something up to my button. So my button is going to call a function every time. So on click, we're going to have it run code. We'll just call it add to cart. All right. And what is this guy going to actually do? Let's just make sure that it's working by, I'm just going to pop up an alert box that says hello. All right, so let's make sure I've got everything hooked up correctly. Add to cart. Oops, add to cart is not defined. Didn't like that. That's that there. Add to cart not defined. Really? Is Is it because it's inside here? Maybe I need to add it outside here? Let's try that. There we go. Okay. So that's kind of interesting. It makes sense though. So this document.ready stuff is a function actually. So all of our stuff is running inside here, and as long as our code is inside here, then everything's visible to us. But this call to add to cart, that's actually happening, that's code that's on this button right here, which is kind of sitting outside of our document.ready stuff. And so since document.ready kind of has its own scope, you guys remember when we talked about scope? What does that mean? Like the function has local scope. And so if I declare a variable in a function, how does scope affect that, being able to access that variable value?
The variable can only be accessed by stuff within the function.
Within the function, right? So if I'm outside the function, it's not visible to me. It kind of keeps you from accidentally overriding variables in different places. So the scope idea is important, and it's a good thing. But in this case here, my button is sort of sitting outside the scope of this document.ready function, right? And so it couldn't find a function that was called add to cart. So I had to actually pull my add to cart function code outside of document.ready, and now it works. All right. But what that means is that probably what I want to do is I may want to pull some other stuff outside this function. So we'll think about that in a second. But I do want you to let's just try doing this to start with. How could I maybe get this function to, whenever I click the button, just increment this value by 1? Any ideas how I might do that? Actually, you know what? I don't even want to go there yet. Let's don't talk about that. Let's talk about local storage. Do you guys remember working with local storage in Burple? Burple, that's what we call it. Burple, not Burple. Do you remember using local storage? We use local storage to like keep up with our stats, so we know how many times we've won the game or lost the game in the past, right? And so local storage is really easy to use. You just basically go local storage, and it's in essence you're creating a variable that's going to be available to you when you close the browser and come back later. All right. So I can do local storage. Num in cart. All right, so this is the number of items in cart, and I can say that's going to be set to 0. All right, so I can initialize something like that, and so what I'm going to do right now is every time. So I've created. Created local storage num in cart. So if I look at what's in local storage right now, I can see that local storage contains, there's some stuff, hey look, it's got scores, it's got some stuff on here from Burple still. So I better clear all that out. Let's do local storage dot, and the only reason all that stuff is there is because it's on my local machine, so it's kind of, usually local storage is kind of tied to a particular website, and in this case here, since I'm doing it on my local machine, it kind of sees all of this as being part of the same website. And so that's why these things are still hanging out there. But we'll just clear everything out so we don't have any stuff in there. Whoops, clear. All right, let me look at local storage now. So local storage doesn't contain anything, and I'm going to add to local storage this num in cart. All right, so now if I look at my local storage, there's only one variable that's there, and it contains the value 0. All right. And so what I want to happen is every time I click add to cart, one of the things that needs to happen is I want to increment this, however many items that are in my cart, this num in cart value by 1. All right, so let's do, how would you think I would write the code to do that? Any ideas? I mean, all I'm trying to do now is just update what's in my local storage variable. So if this is how I define a local storage variable, right here, and I can get that variable back out, by the way, using the same code. So if I type this in, it tells me, oh, 0 is what that variable currently holds. By the way, the value is always listed as a string, so it always stores that information as a string. It doesn't know anything about Boolean data types and integer data types and all that sort of stuff. How might I get the value that's currently in num in cart, increment it by 1, and then add it back to num in cart? Yep.
You can just say local storage num cart plus equal to 1.
Okay. So you're saying do local storage something like this?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not sure if JavaScript had the same way where you could just put like a plus equal to 1 where it just sets it to itself plus 1 or not.
Oh, right. So plus plus will do that,
Okay.
right? That's the purpose of plus plus. So you're saying this, right? So let's see what happens when we do that. Let's reload this. Let's make sure that that guy still has a value of 0. It does. Let's add it to the cart. Let's look at it now. Okay, cool. Let's add it to the cart again. That worked, right? I wasn't sure if it would work because I didn't know if JavaScript if it would handle the automatic type conversion fine. So I wasn't sure about that. What I mean by type conversion. What type is this value right here? What data type is it?
Numeric.
It's not numeric because it's got quotes around it, right? It is a number, but it's got quotes around it, so it's actually a what?
Not numeric.
It's a string. It's a string, right? And so we saw this previously. Like if I were to do sometimes what JavaScript will do when you're using the plus sign and you're trying to add numbers together, if one of the values is a string, JavaScript would actually concatenate them together. So like if I said 2 plus 1, right, it knows those are both numbers, it does it like that. But if I said 2 plus 1 like that with quotes around the 2, it goes, oh, 2 is a string, and so I'm just going to slap the 2 and the 1 next to one another, right? And so I was concerned that plus plus would blow up and say that's not a number, but it handled it okay. So that's actually simpler than what I was going to show you guys. I thought we were going to have to do parse int and change it to an int and then increment it. So that's actually really handy and really easy to do. So do you guys see how easy it would be then using that mechanism to just, every time I click add to cart, it increments my local storage value, right? And so I always know what number should be up here. So if this right here needs to also display whatever that value is, how am I going to update 0 to be, like in this case, it needs to be 3? What code would I need in order to do that? That value right now is in a span tag that has an ID of numcart. So I basically want to take, every time I increment this guy, I want to take the value that's in the numcart variable that's in local storage, and I'm going to put that in the spot of numcart, inside the span tag numcart, overwrite the 0 that's there, or whatever number's there. You guys remember how to do that with jQuery? Aiden's like, yes, I did. Star student, all right. Have you gotten a lot of coffee out of this class this year? Like a lot of, no? Not a lot of coffee. People were like, hey man, I'll buy you some coffee. No, you need to work that a little better, all right? Somebody told me the other day that they were working with a math tutor. They were getting $60 an hour, that math tutor was, for helping out with math. So this is a career, you know, if you just offer some coding, this stuff that you're selling online, let's turn it into a real store, right? And $100 an hour, I'll help you out with your coding assignment. So here's what we're going to do. Aiden, why don't you tell us? How would I change this value right here to be what's in my local storage variable?
You could just do the parentheses and then just do the ID of the numcart.
Right, so pound, because we're using ID, so ID numcart, all right?
And then just set the
Dot val.
or
So,
text.
I was going to say dot text, right? Because this is an HTML element and we're changing the text inside that HTML element. So set the text to be what's right here in local storage numcart. So that should be all we need to do to make that work. So let's see if it's going to work now. So I add to cart, look at there, 4, 5, 6, it just is updated each time, right? Whatever value is in local storage is going to be now reflected in my little shopping cart total up at the top. All right, so we've satisfied that. So that's cool. That's one thing that we needed to do. Another thing we need to do though is we actually have to know that this item was added to the shopping cart 22 times, right? So when we go to our cart page, we recognize that this person wants to purchase a quantity of 22 for this particular item, right? 22 3-hour coding sessions, okay? You can retire basically after this purchase is made. Retire for the summer, maybe. So how are we going to keep track of that? Again, local storage is going to be our best way to do that. All right. So somehow I need to store something in local storage that's going to say they just added a 3-hour coding session to the shopping cart. All right. And if they're on the 3-hour coding session again and they click add to cart again, I need to update local storage and say, okay, now they want to purchase 2 of these items. Now they want to purchase 3 of these items. Okay. Before I do that, let me say this. What happens to our code if there's nothing in? What if the shopping cart variable was never created? All right. So what if this doesn't exist? So if I refresh my page, this is set back to 0 because that's kind of how I had it set on my page. Let's see what happens if I do add to cart right now. Ooh, not a number. Why did it do not a number? Because it tried to increment the value that was here, and that value is not there. Right? So somehow I've got to check for this scenario where this doesn't exist yet. We're creating this variable for the first time. What did we see that the value was when it's not created? Well, now it's set to not a number. Let me go back to this. Let's clear it again. When it's not there, the value for a variable that doesn't exist is undefined. So the way that you check for undefined is really easy. You just need to say if local storage, if this doesn't exist yet, so if I check for this and it equal, I think it's without quotes. Let's try this. Undefined. If it doesn't exist yet, before I run any of my code down here, I need to create it and store my 0 in there. All right? I'll just do it without. It doesn't matter with or without the quotes because it's going to store it as a string anyway. So if I do that, then it's going to initialize it to be 0 if it doesn't exist, and then all of my code will work going forward. Does that make sense? So let's try it again. Let's refresh. Let's make sure local storage is undefined. It is. I add it to the cart. It works. If I check the value again, now it's set to 1, right? So now it'll work going forward. Okay, so we took care of that scenario. How am I going to use local storage to keep up with which items have been purchased and how many of those items have been purchased? Any ideas? There's all kinds of ways you can do this, but knowing what you know about local storage, that local storage basically lets you define a variable and it can hold any string value. You can't use arrays, you can't use anything else. All you can store in local storage is strings. How do you think you could maybe keep up with that in local storage? Any ideas? Levi, you got an idea?
With the IDs.
So you could maybe do that. Maybe this will kind of change your way of thinking on that. This is what your cart page is basically going to have. All right, on my cart page, I'm going to have my item. All right, and the quantity, and then also the price. All right, and so then down here, I'm going to have a total for this whole thing. So let's say, for example, Aiden's adding someone's added 3-hour coding, right? So this needs to say 3-hour coding. They purchased 2 of those at a price of, what was a single 3-hour coding?
It's
$30.
$30? All right, so $30 per item, right? So that's a total of $60. So down here, this guy should say 60. Okay? So I could say the item ID, right? If the 3-hour code obsession is item ID 4, I could say for item ID 4, store some information concerning that. But if I do that, I'm going to have to go back to my JSON file and build this page here. All right. What I think is easier to do is store all of this information in your local storage variables, so that when you load this page, you're not having to deal with anything except local storage. And so that's going to make that page process quicker, because if you think about it, let's say I clicked add to cart like 100 times, right? And so this is maybe well, in our case, we're only selling 12 items, so the most we'd ever see in here is 12, and the quantity is updated. But if I had a bunch of items and I've got to go through my JSON file and look at all those IDs and figure all that stuff out, it's going to take a while to build this guy. Does that make sense? Why that would take a while? If I'm looking and saying, oh, this is ID 4, okay, what's the price of ID 4 and what's the name of ID 4? And oh, the next one is ID 6, so what's the price of ID 6 and what's the name of ID 6? And I've got to do that for hundreds of items. It's going to take a while to do this. But if it's all stored in local storage, that's going to be a lot simpler for me. All right? So ID is a great idea. But can you think of maybe some other way that I could do it if I need this information and I need to be able to access this information quickly from local storage? Any other thoughts? Oops, I'm sorry, I erased you guys. I guess you're out of the club. Class. Plus, there we go. Again, there are multiple ways to do this. Here's the way that I think might be simplest: is when you add an item to local storage, use your product name as your variable name. All right. So if I click Add to Cart, what I want to do is I want to do if it doesn't exist, I'm going to create a variable that's named 3-hour session. Okay? And I'm going to set that variable equal to the product price. So in this case, it's $29.99. And maybe I don't want that with a $sign, because I'm going to fix all that there. So maybe I just want the raw number so I can use it for doing math and totaling things up. I want to have it hold that, and I'm also going to have it hold the quantity of sessions they've purchased. And I'm separating it by that pipe character. All right? And so I do that. So now if I look at local storage, I see that I've got a variable named 3-hour session, and it contains that. And if they click the Add button again, what I'm going to do is increment this value by 1. And so now I can look at this and say, oh, they've purchased a 3-hour session at $29.99, and they've purchased 2 of those guys, or they want to purchase 2 of those guys. All right? Now, local storage is, I can loop through local storage. I can do a for loop on that, and I can get all the values that are in local storage, and I can get this value in the front here, which they call the key, and I can get this value here, which they call the value, right? And so what I can do is I can build a for loop. Once we go to my cart page, I can build a for loop and look at all of the variables except for this num in cart variable, right? Because I don't want that one. But I can look at all the variables, and if I know the key value, then I know what the item is. And this string right here, I can parse that string and get the quantity and the price from it, and I can build these individual lines in my table. Okay? How am I going to, when I say parse this $29.99 pipe character 2, how am I going to parse that? What do I mean by that? Yep.
You can run just like the string and then do .split. And
Yeah. So I can split that string on the pipe character, and what split does is split returns an array of how many items are separated by those pipe characters. So it'll return an array with 2 items in it. The first part of the array contains $29.99, and the second part of the array contains the number, which in our case right here is 2. Okay? So why did I choose a pipe character as I was slapping those together? I could have chosen anything, right? I could have chosen a comma. I just got to choose something that's not going to accidentally be in these values here. because I'm splitting by that pipe character. And I mean, if I decided to separate these by a dot, and there's a dot in 2999, it's going to split that up into, it's going to split that dot there as well. So when you're putting a bunch of information together as a string, and you're separating those pieces of information with some special character, just make sure you choose a character that's not actually going to accidentally show up in the other parts of the string, right? Does that make sense? You guys see how that could be one way, right? This isn't the way you have to do it. You can think about it and give it some more thought. But that's one option. And I'll just kind of show you guys. There's a, let me show you, let's see, where did I do this? F12, somewhere, I just was using a for loop. I found some code online. That went through local storage. That's not it. Maybe it's here. Let's try this one. It's the bad thing about different identities in your browser. Okay, local storage, here we go. There you go. So if I run this code right here, in the browser that we were just in, if I run this code right here will tell me let's see, local storage get item. So instead of I right here, I want to display local storage. I need to revisit that. This is telling me these are the two local storage items we have, and one's got a value of 9, and the other one's got a value of 29.99. There's a way to get that key value. Local storage.length. Let's see. Local storage. Dot keys, is it? No, that didn't work.
I was able to do local storage.key and then pass in just an integer for like 0, and it worked for me.
Oh, that did work. So local storage.key 0. Oh, that gives you the, okay. I thought that's what he was doing here. Oh, I see. I got it. Okay, so yeah, this right here. I need to basically take this. Thank you. Take this, and instead of I'm going to do that. There we go. That'll do it. So this code here will let me loop through local storage. It'll let me get the key and then the value for that key. And so basically, if I loop through all of these keys and just ignore the key that comes back num in cart, right? All of the other keys are going to be my items. And then I can just kind of split the value on that and get the quantity and the price, and I can build my cart page. Okay? So what I'm gonna leave for you guys to do is you've got to figure out how, when I click the add to cart button, I've walked you through how to increment this, but in addition to that, you've also got to figure out how to add to the local storage this variable right here, right? 3-hour session 1 that contains the price and contains the quantity. And you're going to have to do the same thing that we did before, in that if they've never purchased that, if they haven't added that item to the cart yet, you're going to have to recognize that it's undefined right now, and you're going to have to create it for the first time. But for subsequent times, you're going to have to grab the value that's there, the number that they've already added to the cart, and you're going to have to increment that last number by 1. Okay? Does that make sense? All right, so that's going to be your goal this week, is to get that product page working and start and get that stuff in local storage. And then the final day of class, what we're going to work on is actually building our cart page. Okay? And so your final project will be to turn in all of that to me. It'll be due, so since we're not going to have that last day of class, I'm going to give you until that next week, though, even though we don't have class, I'm going to give you until that Friday to turn in all of your work, okay? So you'll have another week after class next week to build your final card page and get all of your project working, so that you can turn in to me everything. And next week we'll go over, in case you don't know how to zip, we'll go over how to zip all that up so you can just upload one zip file, and that's what I'll be bringing you all. Okay? Sound good? All right, cool. You guys have a good one.